So, let's talk about a story that's thousands of years old but still feels incredibly relevant. It's about a man who had everything you could possibly imagine: a kingdom waiting for him, a loving family, wealth beyond belief, and he walked away from it all. We're going to dive into the journey of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, pulling from the ancient Sutra of the Auspicious response to really get how a prince became the Buddha.
And that's really the question at the heart of it all, isn't it? This isn't your typical hero's journey about conquering new lands or defeating enemies on a battlefield. It's about conquering the things that every single one of us has to face: old age, sickness, and death. It's a quest to solve our deepest fears. And what's amazing is that this quest actually began long, long before the prince was even born. You see, Siddhartha's arrival into the world was anything but ordinary. It was a massive event, one that was predicted by sages and marked by signs all over the cosmos. A huge prophecy was hanging over his head from his very first breath, one that laid out two totally different paths his life could take. Yeah, this wasn't just a happy accident. This was the final act of an epic journey that stretched across eons. The text talks about countless lifetimes, these immense periods of time called kalpas, that he spent getting ready for this moment. It all started ages ago, when as a young man, a previous Buddha actually predicted he would one day achieve enlightenment. But it would take 91 kalpas of him working on himself, perfecting his virtues, before he was finally ready for this last, crucial life as Prince Siddhartha. And when he was finally born, the entire universe seemed to celebrate. The scriptures list 32 incredible omens. The earth literally trembled. Trees that were dead suddenly burst into flower, and music just appeared out of nowhere. These weren't just random miracles. This was the cosmos basically sending out a birth announcement that someone who could change the world had just arrived.
So, this wise old sage named Asita comes to see the baby prince, and the moment he sees him, he just starts crying. The king, Siddhartha's father, is totally freaked out, thinking it's a terrible omen. But Asita explains that his tears are for two reasons: joy and sorrow. Joy, because he could see this child would grow up to be one of two things: either a king who would conquer the entire world, or a Buddha who would save it. But sorrow, because Asita knew he was too old and wouldn't live long enough to hear the Buddha's teachings. Now, hearing this prophecy, the king makes a choice. He's determined to make sure his son becomes the world-conquering king, not the world-saving Buddha. So what does he do? He builds a literal gilded cage. He creates these luxurious palaces filled with every pleasure you can think of, all to shield the young prince from ever seeing any kind of suffering. The hope was, if Siddhartha never knew pain, he would never want to leave. But you can't keep reality out forever. On his first trip outside the palace walls, he saw an old man, something totally new to him. The next time, he saw a person racked with disease. On the third trip, he saw a dead body being carried away. These three sights just completely shattered his world, revealing the truth of aging, sickness, and death. But then, on a fourth trip, he saw something different: a peaceful ascetic, a spiritual seeker. And in that man's calm, Siddhartha saw a tiny flicker of hope, a possible way out of all this suffering. And those encounters changed everything. Suddenly, all the parties and music and luxury in the palace felt hollow and meaningless. His mind was just stuck on a loop, thinking, how can I enjoy any of this when I know that I'm also going to get old and get sick and die? I have to find the answer. I must find the way out. That was the moment his life's mission completely changed. He was no longer a prince after a throne. He was a man desperate for an escape. This realization leads him to make one of the most radical decisions in human history. Here's a prince, heir to a kingdom, with a wife and a brand new baby son, and he decides to just leave it all behind in the middle of the night to become a penniless wanderer searching for truth. On the night he decided to leave, he took one last walk through the palace. He saw his court musicians, who were just entertaining everyone hours before, now passed out on the floor, drooling, a total mess. They looked almost like corpses. Then he looked in on his sleeping wife and his newborn son. In that instant, any illusion that worldly pleasure could last was just gone. And his decision became rock solid. He saw it all with this incredible clarity. This palace is a prison. This attachment is a cage. The palace wasn't a home anymore. Even the love he felt for his family felt like this beautiful trap that would keep him from finding freedom for everyone. He knew he had to go, right then and there. So after he snuck out of the city, he did something incredibly symbolic. He met a hunter on the road and traded his fancy royal silk robes for the hunter's rough, simple deerskin clothing. With that one simple act, Prince Siddhartha vanished, and the seeker, the ascetic Gautama, had just been born. He went deep into the forest and threw himself into the most extreme forms of self-denial that existed. The thinking was, if you can conquer the body, you can free the mind. So for 6 long years, he pushed himself to the absolute brink of human endurance. He got so thin, he was basically just skin and bones. But after all that, enlightenment was still nowhere in sight. He finally realized that torturing his body wasn't the answer. So he accepted a small meal, got his strength back, and sat down under a large tree, what we now call the Bodhi tree. And he made a vow. He would not get up from that spot, not even if his body wasted away, until he had achieved complete enlightenment. That absolute commitment, well, that's what set the stage for the final showdown. So the demon king Mara, the lord of illusion and desire, sees this vow and starts to panic. If Siddhartha succeeds, Mara's whole grip on the world is over. So he appears and tries to tempt him, saying, "You're a prince. Go back to your palace and be a king. This whole spiritual thing is pointless." But Siddhartha's resolve was like an army. And when Mara questioned his right to even seek enlightenment, Siddhartha just reached down and touched the ground. And the earth itself roared, bearing witness to all the good he had done over countless lifetimes. When temptation didn't work, Mara turned to fear and lust. He unleashed his demon armies, who threw flaming mountains at Siddhartha. He sent his beautiful daughters to try and seduce him, but nothing worked. Absolutely nothing could touch his deep, profound peace. Every weapon turned into a flower before it reached him, and every temptation just dissolved in the face of his unbreakable calm. And this shows you what the battle was really about. It was an internal war, a battle against his own fear, his own doubt, and his own desire. By staying perfectly centered, he didn't just defeat some external demon. He conquered the Mara inside himself. As the demon army scattered and the morning star appeared in the sky, the path was finally clear. In that deep silence after the battle, just as the sun began to rise, it happened. Siddhartha Gautama achieved supreme, perfect enlightenment. He wasn't a prince anymore. He wasn't even a seeker. He was the Buddha, the awakened one. So what did he learn? His mind opened up to 3 profound kinds of knowledge. First, he could see all of his past lives, stretching back through time. Then, he could see the karmic paths of every being in the universe, understanding how their actions shaped their destiny. And finally, he saw the ultimate root of suffering itself, and understood exactly how to put an end to it, completely. He had found the way out. But okay, knowing the truth is one thing. Getting other people to listen is a whole other challenge. The Buddha knew his insights were deep and not easy to grasp. To get people to take him seriously, he needed credibility. So he went to find Kasyapa, a super famous and respected ascetic master with 1,000 followers. The strategy was simple. If he could convince Kasyapa, the rest of the world would have to pay attention. Now, Kasyapa was impressed with the Buddha, for sure, but he was also very proud. He kept telling his students, and probably himself, sure, this guy is a great holy man, but he's not an arhat like me. An arhat is a fully enlightened being, and Kasyapa was convinced that he was the real deal. What happens next in the story is this amazing spiritual showdown, but the Buddha never argues. He just demonstrates. He calmly tames this ferocious serpent that Kasyapa and all his followers are terrified of. He tells Kasyapa what he's thinking. The text says he performs over 350 of these miracles, patiently taking apart Kasyapa's pride, piece by piece, with undeniable proof. Finally, Kasyapa just couldn't deny it anymore. He bowed down, admitting the Buddha was the true master. He and his 500 followers literally threw their old ritual tools into the river and asked to follow the Buddha. When Kasyapa's 2 brothers, who lived downstream, saw all the stuff floating by, they came to see what happened, and they and their 500 followers also converted on the spot. Just like that, the Buddha gained 1,000 followers, the core of what would become the first Buddhist community. You know, the Buddha's entire journey, from a palace to the forest, from extreme self-denial to perfect balance, it was all a journey into his own mind. He didn't leave home to find some god up in the sky. He left to find the source of true freedom within himself. And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? His story shows what's possible when you look inward. What might we discover if we tried to do the same?